Hi there, Dr. Nicola Dellinger here, joined today by Barbara Gormally. Thank you so much for coming. Yes. So Barbara has been a coach for over 15 years, coming up on 20.
Yes.
So doing a lot. I know, right? It happens fast.
It happens
faster than you think. So lots and lots of experience with just helping people move through obstacles in their world, be it work, relationship, health, a whole bunch of different layers. And so has really been studying the Enneagram as part of her work and as a really influential tool in what informs her work so that she can work with each individual more personally with a depth of understanding, I think, that the Enneagram brings.
Yes.
So
not the cookie cutter thing.
Right.
That's what I love about it.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't call you cookie cutter.
No. I'm a Gemini. No one would call me cookie cutter.
Not even.
There's a lot of me.
Yeah.
It's only supposed to be two. There's a lot of
twins
me.
Of twins.
Yes, twins of twins. I like that.
Yep.
Yeah, my mom always will tell me someday, she's like, there's way too many of you showing up today.
Really?
Yeah, she has done that in the past.
Oh, I love that. As a Taurus, I don't get that.
Yeah.
So we're happy to have you with us.
Thanks.
I'm excited.
Yes.
And part of the reason this came to be is that one of my videos about the inner critic really kind of touched something for Barbara because, of course, when we're coaching and working through something or trying to grow into a bigger version of who we are, the inner critic is sure to show up on your door.
It's really, the inner critic's interesting. So this might sound strange to some of you, but it's both tangible and not tangible. So it's when we start really studying it, we feel like we can touch it and feel it and massage it. And also when we start studying it, we go, wow, there really isn't anything here unless I make it be here, because that's what happens with the inner critic.
Okay.
So I always tell people, they'll go, well, how is this tangible? Because some personality styles want tangible.
Yeah, concrete.
So I'll help them. Yeah, they want the concrete, so I'll help them find the concrete. And then others are like, I don't know, this is a little woo-woo. Well, yeah, it is.
Well, let's back up a second. What is the Enneagram for those of us who haven't been experiencing Enneagram?
So you all have access to the what'd you call it? Dr. Google.
Yeah.
I just got a new term a while ago, Dr. Google. So you can Google it. But I want to just give a couple of simplistic answers to something that's actually pretty complex.
Sure.
So what I love about the Enneagram is it's timeless and it's for a lifetime. So once we learn about our personality style, and we all have one, we've all probably even said, oh my God, so-and-so doesn't even have a personality. Yes, they do. We all have a personality.
That's on the Enneagram. So the Enneagram is kind of a map to different types of personalities.
It's a map to different types of personalities. Okay. And it has 9 personality styles to it in that lens. So there's other kinds of programs out there. Many of you have been a part of them or gone through assessments with them. But the Enneagram has 9. Okay. But the other part about it is it's also a map for self-love.
Ooh.
And that's a big piece that other tools, I'm going to call it a personality tool, but the other tools don't have that. And this does have a map to self-love, and it also is a map for the bigger piece of spirituality. It's not I wouldn't call it a complete spiritual path, but I would call it a great big exploration.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why I love it.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Because it's not really narrow.
Okay. So how do you use it?
So clients will come to coaching for many different reasons. And what I do in my line of coaching, in my practice, is I watch how their personality style is being resourceful for the issue at hand and unresourceful. So let's just say that someone comes to me, I'm just going to use stress because we can all relate to that, okay? Each of our personality styles interfaces with stress differently, and we all experience stress differently. That's the other thing I like about the Enneagram. The Enneagram is more about what you're experiencing rather than results.
Okay.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
What are you experiencing rather than the results? So my style, so I'll pick on myself while I'm here, my style would experience stress when there's not a pathway, when there's not a checklist of things to do, when there's when there's not performance, if you will, to be done. So my experience of stress and how I get stressed is not going to be the same, Nicola, as someone who is more in the intellect side of things. They do not experience stress in the same way I do. So what I'm watching for with the client, and sometimes I use the assessment very directly, and other times someone never even knows I'm using it as a tool. It becomes my tool.
Gotcha.
And I'm watching for how to interface with them very specifically around their experience. And that's why I like it, again, because it's not cookie cutter. It's what is your experience of it, and I'm watching how the personality style plays into that.
Right.
And we have levels of health within our personality style. And this was the piece that hooked me about the Enneagram. So I got hooked onto the Enneagram through a counselor. Hubby and I long ago were having marital disagreements. Hiccups. Big hiccups.
Burps.
Yeah. Was not pretty. And we still have them. So anyway, that's life.
Marriage,
yeah, welcome to marriage. So the counselor that we were going to introduced us to the Enneagram. Well, my style took that and ran with it. Now, his style, not so much. Hubby's style, not so much, okay? My style did, and I actually came out of the corporate sector, so I knew just about every assessment tool that was out there, every self-help thing, every personality thing that was available, but I actually had never known about the Enneagram. And this counselor introduced us to it, and I did what you're actually not supposed to do. I went home after the first introduction to that, and I was up for almost 30 hours, Nicola. I'm not kidding you.
Really?
Reading about this. You're not supposed to do this. Don't do this. The reason I say this is because it's not pretty. When we start to learn about who we take ourselves to be, it's just not pretty. So, I mean, I went into shame, and I went into guilt, and I went into just a lot of oh shit moments. Yes. And I was like, oh my God, I've always taken myself to be this person, and I'm not. In fact, I'm actually so much more. I didn't even know I was limiting myself at the time, right? So it has the wonderful piece with the Enneagram is it teaches us that there's a map to a better level of health within our personality style. Usually when people start out learning this, we're all in an average level of health. If we're in what is called the lowest levels of health, that's when I call or just give a number to somebody, including myself at times, to all my favorite counselors or psychotherapists, because that's really when someone needs to be forwarded to that area. Mm-hmm. But when we start learning about who we are even in our average level of health for our own personality style, we begin to see that we're not using ourselves to our best and most glorious extent, actually. But the map to it lets us see this. This is why I love this, because I can show someone, well, this is kind of about where it sounds to me like you're operating with this thing at work, or interfacing with your naturopath who's trying to help you do a couple things to get well. You're blocking it. And then here's what it would look like if you're not. So in this system, we have our levels of health. And to me, that was the part that knocked my socks off when I learned about this, because I got to learn that I get to have a map to shift who I am. The other thing with the Enneagram, it doesn't want you to change. There's nothing about
thank God.
changing. It's more about
Perfect.
How can I enhance myself?
Okay.
How can I advance myself?
Okay.
And I love that.
So will you say a little bit more? So my personality style might have an impact on my level of health?
So, different level of health. So, let me think how to do this. So, again, I'll use myself. So, let's just say I have a big project to do and I create a to-do list. Mindy, I just saw you on there, so stop laughing. Yeah, I'll create a to-do list, right? And if I don't go through that to-do list exactly, I could get very frustrated and stressed out and probably even miss the big picture of what I'm needing to do. But if I say, okay, there is a value in creating the checklist, which there is, and then if I can let the checklist have some flow to it, then I can operate at a higher level of health within my personality style. I also don't get stressed out and have to come in to Dr. Nicola and say, what's on your shelf to bring down my stress level?
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense now?
So
it's within your style.
So the more you start understanding your personality style, the more you work with your natural tendency rather than against it. Like, everybody should get on board to my list, or I'm a terrible person because I need to be attached to this list.
Yes. Or why isn't everybody attached to my list? Can't they see that this makes this work?
It's the best list
It's the best list ever.
I worked hard to make this list.
I worked hard to make this list. Oh, and by the way, while I was busy making that list, 5 other things that probably needed to be done didn't get done because I was a little too tied to my list. That's a misuse of
list making.
Yes.
So I only have a little bit of understanding about the Enneagram, but my understanding is like we have a tendency like list making that can be used to elevate our experience or to really detract from our experience.
Yes.
Like if we get too bound to the list, it's going to take away. But if we have this lightness with the list, so it's not about getting rid of the list.
It's
about being in relationship to it different.
I'm not my list. But when the ego of our personality kicks in, that's who we take ourselves to be. And we're so much more. We're not our personalities. We're really not. The but to that is we sure as heck go play in that sandbox quite a bit because we don't know.
Right.
We don't know how to discern that.
Okay.
So there's in each level of health within the Enneagram, within your style, the cool thing with the map is you get to see what the differences are in your behavior. That's the part I love. So I'll ask somebody, in this stress situation that you have at work, do you want to operate at, and granted somebody would already have the background, I've been working with them so they would understand this, but do you want to operate at a level of health 5 for your 3 style? Or would you like to operate at a level of health 2 or 1, which is more liberated?
Okay.
There. And what would those experiences be? And that is fascinating to watch any of us begin to learn how to discern that.
Okay.
Yes.
So I imagine then if we're operating in kind of that lower vibratory pattern of our personality style, that's kind of a haven playground for our inner critic, right? You're not doing it right, whatever.
Yes.
I mean, talk to me a little bit about how that interplays, like understanding your personality.
Yeah. So hold on, I'm going to get something.
Oh, good. Yay, props.
So
you haven't. It looks like you've looked at this book maybe.
Well, this is my major text.
And
so here you go. Like you can see, like tabs, and God forbid if I drop this, but this is really the book I use the most with clients. So that's why it looks like this. But what was I going to show? Oh yeah. Let's see. I want to show you something with. I think I tabbed this out. So in each of our personality styles, how the inner critic might show up differently. Let's see where I have that marked. Okay, so don't worry that you don't get what these what the real background is between each of these, but I want you to hear how your inner critic might show up. So type 1s are typically the people who are perfection. Like perfection feels really comfortable for them. They want everything done just right. They have role models that say this is how it should go, and so then that's how it should go.
I'm pretty sure I'm a
so you might
typed as a 1.
Probably a wing for you, I would think. But anyway, that's just because I know you. But anyway, so here's the type 1. So are you being good enough? Are you doing things right? If you let up on taking responsibility, you're in danger. So listen to me and I'll make things better. I'll straighten you out. So that's what the inner critic sounds like for the 1.
I was like, why is that so familiar?
Yeah, why is it so familiar, right? So here's why, again, why I love the Enneagram. So I'm going to switch now to one of the styles that would be very different from you or I, because our styles are within the same area. But so here's the type 5. So here's what their inner critic would do. So the type 5s are very much so focused on intellect, facts, research. They might be Dr. Google, right? So here's how the 5's inner critic shows up. Are you smart enough? Are you competent enough? Are you figuring out how things work? If you don't have enough expertise, you're in danger. Yeah. I'll straighten you out. So I want you to really hear the difference between those two realms of how the inner critic can show up.
Yeah.
So I never generalize the inner critic to someone. I might give them a general picture of what that means, but whatever that inner critic is for each of us is different because of our personality style.
Oh, fascinating.
It's fascinating and it's important. Let me read you one for the type 7. Are you free enough? Are you being spontaneous enough? Are you having enough fun? Do you have enough white space to have enough fun? If you show your sadness, you're in danger. This is always very interesting. Your inner critic loves to make you think you're in danger.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, she does.
Yeah.
Because that's how she calls me to action.
And so then again, we hear her saying, or him saying, so I'll straighten you out.
Yeah. So
the inner critic is really busy with always wanting to straighten us out. But straighten us out of what?
Right.
That's what we have to check in with. I don't need to be straightened out of something when I can see that I could be operating from a different level of health, an advancement, an enhancement, than where I'm getting caught for my inner critic to kick in.
Awesome.
This is the part I love about this. This type 8, are you strong enough? Okay. Are you in control? Have you done everything in your power to be in control? And if you show vulnerability, you are in big trouble. You're in great big danger.
So what the theme I'm picking up is that the inner critic is always A, telling us we're going to be in danger, but B, trying to keep us safe from danger.
Yes.
But the dangers aren't all the same.
The dangers are not all the same. So this is why I get a little bit, I have my own little hiccup when I hear somebody say, well, just be yourself. Okay? If we're just being ourselves at an average level of health within our personality style, we're certainly doing that. But it may not be resourceful. It's not our whole self. We're actually being our personality instead of liberated from it.
Gotcha.
And when we don't know that, the wrong message lands. And so I'm always really careful with that.
Yeah.
Because that's who we take ourselves to be.
Gotcha.
Instead of the bigger realm that we are. We're not our personalities, but funny enough, we really pull them in.
Right.
Yeah.
It sure feels that way.
It really feels that way until we can see that it's an experience. You know, how am I interacting with this style? So for me, I actually have a hard time interacting with somebody who gets really intellectual
Okay.
I'm like, okay, it makes my inner critic come out and say, you're not good enough.
Oh, okay.
You're not smart enough.
Oh, uh-huh.
That's what happens.
Okay.
So then I'm like, oh, wow. Watch how I interact with that.
Interesting.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It activates my inner critic in that way. So then, of course, what am I going to do? I might say, I don't want to go to lunch with that person anymore. I don't want to be on the team with that person anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it plays out in all these different ways
out
in our world, but we don't realize why we're feeling intimidated by that person or
unless I can connect into it and go, oh, it's great that they are more on the intellectual side than I am. Because maybe I need to borrow from that sometimes.
I love that phrase.
Yeah, I love to borrow. So I'll have clients and say, they're like, oh, I just can't go to that place of, where the 5 style can operate in this intellectual piece. And so I'll just say, well, what if we borrow a little bit of its best self for you? And then somebody might say, well, I guess I could do a little bit more research when I have to present whatever at work, or go look up maybe something that Dr. Nicola told me might be interesting for me to think about with my body. So then it's not a pushback, it's more of an invitation.
So the more deeply that I understand my personality type, then the more spacious I can be about other people's personalities.
It's so true.
Okay.
Yes.
Because now I can identify, oh, okay, well, that person's a 5, and
yes,
they just have a different way of approaching the world than me, and now it's not a threat.
So when I work with businesses and help them work with teams, we take a look and we see where the styles are, who's which style, and then the idea there is, how do we keep each style illuminated? How do we keep that style doing what is best for them? An example there, and I actually had this, it's been a while back, but a person was pretty hooked up on their perfection lens for something. So I began to help her learn how to, and I will say I use this term, zip it, but I said, when is part of this really about perfection? And what she began to see was there was only a few snippets with what this project at work was that required perfection.
Okay.
And when she got that, in fact, she had a lot more fun.
Yeah.
Yes, she relaxed it. But then where the perfection was required and was important, man, she brought it in, and she brought it in beautifully. And then it made sense. So this was to a group of some engineering work that was being done.
And it's probably appreciated by the team.
And then it was appreciated.
Because it wasn't always perfection.
Yes.
It was just when it was required.
Yes.
And then I imagine that creates a state of health and ease and even joy, because now she's at work knocking it out of the park.
And now I don't come into you and say, my stomach is always hurting when I'm in this meeting with these guys because of blah, 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 blah.
Because they're shooting you daggers.
Yes. And then I come in and I go, well, Nicola, I probably might still need something, but I don't get so hooked.
Yeah.
Now in trying to present my...
Right. Fix ourselves
yes.
as though something were broken.
Yes.
But really it's because we haven't really been in relationship to ourselves in a deeper way.
Yes.
That we perceive it as broken. Like, oh, I always have to be so perfectionistic. Why do I always have to? Rather than, wow, what a gift, when it's appropriate.
It's a gift. So the beauty with every single one of our personality styles through the Enneagram, and all of them, but we all have amazing gifts and talents and just these natural skills and abilities. But if we don't know how to connect into them for their authenticity, then we end up connecting into them in wrong use.
Okay.
So I love this book that is actually done by the school that I went to, the teacher that I went to, and she says, transforming your relationship to everything that matters by being in relationship to yourself first. So we don't get a chance to learn how to be in relationship with ourselves first before we get thrown into this crazy world and have to be in relationship with everything and everybody else. But when we know how to experience ourselves and can really discern all of that, and there's a lot to it. We're not, there's that movie called It's Complicated. Yeah. It is. We're not simple. We're human beings, and we have this amazing humanness about us. And there's no silver bullet to the growth of our humanness. We need every piece.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the coach needs the coach needs the naturopath, the coach needs, you know, the mindfulness teammate or practitioner. We all need all the modalities that are out there for us. Nothing's a silver bullet. Pieces might fit in for a few months or a few weeks or a few years,
sure,
for a good long
mm-hmm.
period of time, and then something else shifts in.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And we have to, all the modalities play in.
Absolutely.
To our humanness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And when we get that, then that place of personality style can play in, and then we also learn that if our inner critic is showing up, I always just, I'll invite a client, can you invite your inner critic to just go sit in the timeout chair? Right? I mean, just, can you just go sit in the timeout chair? And it's really, it adds humor.
Mm-hmm.
It adds the humanness to it. We get to name it and really realize what's happening. And then we get to take the checklist we just worked 4 hours on and throw it away.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, all the stickies.
But
yes,
in my evolution out of my one perfectionist thing, not everything's checked off.
Everything's checked off.
Not everything is checked off. So
I'm
evolving.
Oh.
And this has been on my desk for 2 weeks.
Yay.
That's right.
That's a thing.
See, you can move out of perfectionism.
Yeah.
But I still
enhance it.
Right.
It's about, again, I just can't, that's why I love this particular piece that I bring to the coaching field, is that not just me, but any coaches associated with it, it's about enhancement and advancement of yourself. It's not about change. You're changing your levels of health, your behavior mm-hmm. levels of health, mm-hmm. but it's really about the enhancement and the advancement.
Cool.
That's the coolest thing to me.
By putting being in relationship to yourself as your top priority.
Is your top priority.
Mm-hmm.
So I call it, this is the fabulous thing of this work too, is I finally get to focus on me, myself, I, and mini me. Like, I finally get permission to do that. And that's why I tell clients, you are finally giving yourself permission to focus on me, myself, I, and mini me.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some days like, they're like, me, myself, I, and mini me didn't do so good. I'm like, we all, yeah.
Sure.
We all mess it up.
Happens.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah,
this was fascinating. I had no idea there was a map to self-compassion and self-love, and that it's actually that like that black and white, literally.
It is. I'm careful a little bit there with the black and white,
well, no,
but
in a book. You can
in a book you can read. Yes, and then
yeah.
you can. The light bulbs can go on.
Yeah, and it's not to say that you're just going to stuck like in one personality. Like there's these things called wings where you have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So it's not like we're trying to say this is who you are and that's it.
Every style lives within us.
Mm-hmm.
Please know that. Somebody will say, "Oh, but I've got some 5 in me, but it seems like I'm a long ways away from that." Well, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
We're whole people.
Right.
We're not compartmentalized,
mm-hmm.
and however we actually create ourselves to be that way.
Try as we might be.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for having me. This was
awesome.
Fun. We've been a long time in trying to kind of pull something together.
I know. This is the beginning of something.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining. All of you who have been watching live, and then if you're watching afterwards, and if you want to get in touch with Barbara Gormally, I'm sure she'd love to hear from you. We will tag her on this video here. And then if you want to jump in a little more deeply into putting yourself first, we've got a program. Barbara's going to be a guest. You can learn a little bit more about what she offers, along with some other fabulous guest speakers and me. And so we would love to have you join in and start putting yourself first and start deepening your relationship to you, so that you can get out of your own way and create everything beyond what you wanted, because what's coming to you is so much more than you can even visualize now. So, but it all starts with understanding yourself and being in relationship with yourself more deeply.
Mm-hmm. And it's not selfish. Oh my God, right? It's hot. We are really going to get off. But, but this is an important piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not selfish when we put ourselves first from a lens of consciousness.
I love that.
When we do it unconsciously,
Right.
yeah,
Sure.
there's some hiccups there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we do it from a place of consciousness, it's not selfish, and it's so much more liberating.
And create so much more for you, but everybody else in your sphere and beyond. It's all about creating so much more, but not just for me.
Exactly.
It's like doing your work and honoring yourself then opens up this huge vehicle to just create more in the world, more for everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in this time and place on our planet, using ourselves to our best self, there's a lot of cry out for that.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah. So jump in, choose you, join us in the program, join us here live, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks so much.
See ya.